JJ McCarthy is going to be the starter. We've known that for a while. And we never bought the Aaron Rodgers hype. But now that it's here, now that we're starting to actually see him on the field, what are the realistic outcomes? What are the possible different ways that this can go? And how do we get there? We're going to explore those in kind of a broad spectrum. And throughout the rest of the offseason, we'll go more in depth. But we're going to lay out all the groundwork here on tonight's episode of The Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Real Forno Show, sponsored by your friends at Underdog Fantasy. My name is Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top left corner is producer Dave. Dave, did you hear what Harrison Phillips had to say about J.J. McCarthy earlier today?
I read it. I don't remember it, but I read it, yes.
And I thought it was very interesting, and I want to kind of start off there because he basically said that he reminds him of Josh Allen. And Phillips saying that carries more weight with me because Phillips was in the same draft class as Josh Allen. Saw Josh Allen in rookie minicamp. Saw Josh Allen grow throughout the entirety of that rookie contract. And then Harrison Phillips obviously came to Minnesota and didn't get to really enjoy a lot of that Josh Allen success. He got 2 years of that. But him saying those things means a little bit more than somebody else because you get to see them at all of those points. And the comparison was essentially like growing as a leader, growing as the guy, and understanding what you have to do to elevate and be able to get to that spot to where you were consistently competing for Super Bowls. Now, the Bills haven't actually gotten a Super Bowl win, Dave. And that's been really frustrating on multiple levels. But it's not from a lack of trying. They are stuck with Patrick Mahomes in the division. That's the problem. That every year they have been eliminated by either Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. What are you supposed to do? Oh, 1 year they got eliminated by Joe Burrow. All three quarterbacks have a claim to potentially being better than Josh Allen. Whether you agree or not is kind of irrelevant. They're all in that bucket of this is an elite level quarterback. And having an elite level quarterback means you can play in those types of games and always have a chance to win. Well, McCarthy, we don't know what he's going to be yet. We're going to kind of explore that here today because there's a lot of different outcomes. There's the outcome where he's just great right away. There's an outcome where he's solid right away and then grows into great, kind of like the Russell Wilson mold, where Wilson as a rookie was really solid, led them to the divisional round of the playoffs. And then they obviously made the Super Bowl the next 2 seasons and arguably should have won both of them. There is, hey, maybe he's just kind of average right away and it takes him a little bit to ramp up, kind of like how Josh Allen was. He had to rely a lot on his legs early on. And then there's the model where he's just not that good. And that's a very frustrating outcome, but I think it's one that we should talk about because it's on the range. It's not one we want. It's not one we're going to try to manifest, but it's one that we need to at least be cognizant of and be like, okay, well, if this starts to happen, what do we do? How do we get out of that? How do we turn things around and make him a quote unquote good quarterback? And I think let's start with the negative stuff. The Harrison Phillips quote, that was essentially what it was. It was, hey, this guy reminds me a lot of Josh Allen with procedurally, how he handles himself, how he's handling being the guy in the locker room, which is great to see. But let's start off with what could end up being a bad outcome for J.J. McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings, where he's just not good. And I think one of the interesting things about that is he didn't have a lot of college seasoning. And I think that could be something where you could point to where, hey, He just did not have the opportunity to get enough reps in college to be able to fully translate it. And one of the things we talked about, and if you guys want the SKOL search episode we did on JJ McCarthy, I high recommend it, because we dove into a lot of those in greater detail during the course of last year's draft cycle, because there's so much to like about McCarthy. The biggest questions were always, well, he barely did it in college. And there were, I think 7 fourth quarters his final year at Michigan where he didn't even play. Like, you're not getting yourself into a lot of these situations. And there's 2 ways to look at it. One, you're so good that you don't have to play in the fourth quarter, which is what it was. But not having those situations at a lower level, when you have those situations at a higher level, makes it a lot more difficult, because you're kind of experiencing them, not for the first time, but you're experiencing them at a much higher frequency, and you've never had to deal with that before. So how do you handle that? And by all accounts, McCarthy has the maturity and the headspace to be able to handle those things. But let's look at it from the perspective where he's not able to, where there are a lot of struggles early on. And I think having this in really broad strokes with this conversation is an important thing, because we don't want to pigeonhole and say, hey, JJ McCarthy is going to be the MVP, or JJ McCarthy is going to be a bust. We don't want to have that conversation. We don't want to say this is a guarantee. We want to lay out potential outcomes. The reason why you want to lay out outcomes instead of talking as a matter of fact, it's really simple. You have no evidence to say he's going to be anything other than a projection. Anything you say about McCarthy right now is a projection, because he's never played in the NFL. So just like with a draft prospect, that's kind of how we're going to treat McCarthy here, because we want to look at the range of outcomes. We want to see, hey, if he gets into this hole, how do we help him get back out of it? If he starts great, how do we help him maintain it? It's about process more than actually pointing out results, which is why we're having this conversation. So if McCarthy comes out and struggles right away, I don't think it's going to be that bad. It's going to be that big of a deal. There's always going to be the risk he's a Christian Ponder. Until you prove you're not, there's always that chance. And that's hard to hear, but that goes with every quarterback. That one with Jaden Daniels, he's already proved he's not a Christian Ponder. Caleb Williams, there's still maybe like a 0.1% chance he could be a complete bust. Drake May, there's still that 0.1% chance he could be a complete bust. I'd say that about Bo Nix. I'd say that about Michael Penix Jr. Like, he hasn't shown that he's anything more than just an idea yet. And until then, we have to at least acknowledge that that could be a possibility. I don't think he will be. I think he's going to be a good starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't know if he'll get to like top 5 level, but I think he'll be good. And that, with this roster, that's plenty good enough to win the Super Bowl in this offense, because of the skills that he possesses, the ability to read defenses, the ability to zip the ball in those intermediate windows, which is where Kevin O'Connell loves to live. He loves to hit those windows. But what if he's just a slow processor right away? What if he can't end up seeing things as quickly as he should because the speed of the game is too much right away? And we can talk about, hey, he was in the room last year. He did the VR stuff. And you know what? The VR stuff could help. Absolutely. But VR is still different from reality, because you can feel it come digitally. But until you have a 300-pound man trying to take your head off, it hits differently. And McCarthy has shown at the college level that doesn't face him at all. But we'll face him in the NFL. And I kind of look at it from a perspective of Lewis Cine. Lewis Cine is one of the bigger busts in recent memory for the Vikings. One thing that was really interesting about Lewis Cine is who's so good at reading and reacting in college. He sees it in front of him, he triggers downhill, and he makes the play. He sees something happening in front of him, adjusts coverage, makes the right play. That was a constant on his tape. Gets to the NFL, can't do it at all. Incredibly slow processing. So there is something to the fact that, hey, just because you can do it at one level doesn't mean you can do it at the next. So with McCarthy, the one thing that I think is going to really help him, which is going to be a big theme across this entire conversation, Dave, he has a roster to support him where if he's bad, it may not matter. If he's average, you can win 12 games. This is a very deep roster. It's a roster that is built to support a young quarterback. So I think if he's rough, I think it'll be early. I think it'll be like first 5 games, and then you bring him into the film room during the bye week and you fix some stuff. Because you really can't fix a lot during the season, but you can fix during the bye week because you have extra time. So when it comes to the potential of, hey, maybe McCarthy's just not very good, I don't think we should be raising a red flag where, hey, this guy just can't do it. And that doesn't necessarily mean he'll be bad his entire career. Like, you can have a rougher first year and still figure it out. Not everybody comes out and is guns blazing. Took John Elway a little bit. It took Terry Bradshaw like 6 years to figure it out. And then the Steelers won 4 Super Bowls. It can take time. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I think McCarthy will be bad. But if he is, we need to be patient. It takes time to adjust to the NFL. Live game reps matter, especially at this speed. And if it takes him 6 to 8 weeks, then that's okay. If it takes him a year or 2, I think that's okay, because it's what you want the finished product to be that's going to ultimately matter more than what the product is right now. And I think the one thing you can point to where if he struggles right away, Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is only 27 years old. He's entering his 28th season. His age 28 season, excuse me. And what's really interesting about that is because it took him so long to really figure things out, like, it's like, oh, this guy took forever. It's probably an anomaly. Well, maybe it's not. And he just got stuck in really rough situations. Well, the one nice thing is, like, Darnold's 28. He's still in the prime of his career. So you can still see him rip off a few really good years. And if he does, I don't think anybody will be too surprised. But the one thing about McCarthy is if he has a struggles early on, you can just go to Kevin O'Connell and be like, all right, let's go fix him. Let's go back into the lab. They did some of those things with Sam Darnold, and they were able to make him, at one point, he was an MVP candidate. So I think in that situation where he's in a little bit of a rougher spot, there doesn't need to be this panic button. There doesn't need to be, hey, I'm concerned. Because one of the things that they did last year, they spent all offseason last year trying to fix the mechanics. And by fix, it's adjust, because so much of what he did at Michigan, they did a lot of RPO kind of stuff. Vikings don't do a lot of that. You're looking at pro style footwork. So instead of having his feet even at the snap when shotgun, he's having 1 foot forward and getting used to that. And then when you get used to something, I'll never forget when Tim Tebow was coming out of Florida in the NFL draft, this line that SportsCenter had has always stuck with me. It takes about 10,000 reps to make it a habit when it comes to playing quarterback. So he didn't get a chance to really drill all that footwork stuff in. So there could be some messy stuff early on. Messy footwork could lead to interceptions, could lead to bad throws. And that can ultimately impact how the season goes, because he didn't necessarily have all that time to be able to really drill that in and make it a true habit. So overall, the entire scope of this conversation is with the Vikings, if they end up seeing McCarthy struggle early on, I really don't think it's a big deal. Now, if he's Tavares Jackson, Spurgeon Wing, Christian Ponder level bad, and he's bad for 17 games, then we maybe need to have a conversation. But there's going to be bumps, and I don't think we're used to that. We're not used to having like a young quarterback and there just be these huge bumps in the road. Even with Teddy Bridgewater, his first full year as a starter, there weren't necessarily bumps. It just wasn't high-level play all the time. It was like, okay, you're getting average, and then every so often he'll bump it up, but the offensive line had so much to do with that. Norris Fias, I am not glazing Gators again. I just remember because I was so dialed into his draft process because I am a huge Gator fan. That line is just stuck with me. 10,000 reps to make it a habit. And they were talking about his throwing motion, but it goes with anything. It goes with footwork, goes with how do you swivel your hips and use them to drive the football. It goes with the throwing motion. It goes with like how you stand in the pocket and getting comfortable with that footwork. Like, that all matters, and that'll translate with JJ McCarthy as well. So, all in all, I don't think we really need to panic at all unless he plays like Spurgeon win for 17 games. We're going to see some rough stuff. But I also don't think we're in any place where we should even think about panicking. And that's about all we're going to do as far as the negatives with McCarthy, because I think it's important to at least address it. It's important to have a realistic conversation and not just be like, JJ is going to throw. Like, I remember that one guy on Twitter who's a Bears fan last year projected Caleb Williams throw for like 5,400 yards. Said, oh, this is the low end of what could happen. Like, dog, like only 11 seasons in NFL history have had a 5,000 yard passer, and you're expecting a rookie to do it. And for context, he had about 3,800, which
in
Bears
Chicago.
still have never had the Bears still have never had a 4,000 yard passer, which is still so funny to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
they have a Pope before they have a 4,000 yard passer.
Truly incredible. But we need to, as a collective unit, understand that maybe McCarthy's just not good right away. That's okay. It's okay if he struggles. It's okay if it takes a minute for him to figure things out. Because at the end of the day, it's not about right away. It's about what he looks like in his second year as a starter, his third year as a starter, when you really start to see what that player is going to be long term. So I think Edwin brings up a good point that Ross Tucker was on Purple Daily and he thinks the Vikings will win 7-9 games. I think Ross Tucker is like, the way he's approaching the Vikings, I think is ridiculous. He's like, oh, they don't really believe in JJ McCarthy because they wanted to bring back Sam Darnold. They wanted to bring back Daniel Jones. They talked about signing Aaron Rodgers. That just lacks any void of context. And one of the reasons why sometimes with like the national media, it becomes incredibly frustrating because, yeah, of course they're going to want to keep Sam Darnold, but it's always at the dollar amount. Like, you don't give up that kind of quarterback unless the price is too high. And for the Vikings, the price got too high because they had the 10th overall pick. They wanted Daniel Jones as a backup, a mentor, and potentially somebody who could start right away if McCarthy just needed a little bit more seasoning before he got out there. Jones decided that he would take less money overall from the Colts because he thought he would have a better chance to get onto the field. And Aaron Rodgers, look, I hated the Aaron Rodgers thing. Everybody who watched us back in February, which, one, thank you. And two, please like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell. You have to at least have a discussion about bringing in a guy who was MVP 3 years ago. You talk about it. They had a conversation with him. They decided not to, and I think it was the right move. But to just, and I listened to that clip, and to just say those things without actually giving that kind of context as to the why, because the why tells you more than what the actual quote is. The why about how the Vikings wanted to bring back Sam Darnold and wanted to bring back Daniel Jones. It had nothing to do with McCarthy. They wanted to keep those guys, and that's okay. But they weren't going to pay Sam Darnold that $35 million asking price. They wanted to get him. I don't know what the number is. I don't have the source, but I'm guessing they wanted him at about 25. And then it was more palatable for them on like a 1-year deal. But Darnold got paid. That's okay. Daniel Jones, $14 million for like a fringe starter or a low-end starter in the league is fair. But they also realized that Jones had another market and he wanted to go there. That's completely fine. But those guys have nothing to do with how they believe in McCarthy. And I think that disconnect is so frustrating because it's either malicious and they don't care about trying to find that context, or it just doesn't matter. They're trying to find their own narrative. Everybody seems to try to find drama with the Minnesota Vikings. You notice that, Dave? Last year, it was the Justin Jefferson. Oh, he doesn't have an extension. He wants to be traded. Oh my God. I wanted to kill everybody last summer. It was bad. And then this year, oh, Kevin O'Connell doesn't have a contract extension. Maybe the Vikings will trade him. Well, 2.5 weeks later, he had a contract extension. Kwesi Ofamensa didn't have a contract extension. He literally said, I've been too busy trying to improve the Minnesota Vikings to talk about my contract. Mark Wolf said, oh, it'll get done. Still trying to drive narratives and stuff. And it's incredibly frustrating because one thing we always try to do here, Dave, is we always try to provide the context of the why, because I think the why is more important than anything. The why behind wanting Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones to be here with JJ McCarthy doesn't mean they don't believe in him. So when he says, I think they'll win 7 to 9 games, I think if McCarthy is average, they can still win 12. Like, that's the one thing people aren't giving this team credit for. It's a loaded roster. It's a deep roster. It's a roster that can win in spite of the quarterback. That is what we should be talking about, not about, oh, they don't believe in JJ McCarthy. Then you're just not paying attention. You're straight up not paying attention if you think the Vikings don't believe in McCarthy. Because everything they've actually told you says otherwise. And I think that's one of my biggest frustrations with the national media is they don't have the time to really dive into all 32 teams, which is incredibly difficult to do. But if you just did a couple Google searches, looked at a transcript or two, which you can find if you're a national media member, there's ways to get that information. Pretty easy ways. You would know they believe in him tenfold because Kevin O'Connell will tell you what he's thinking. You just have to understand how to read between those lines, and I don't think they do. So Ross Tucker saying that to me is I don't take much credence from it because of how he presented his argument. To me, how he presented his argument immediately disqualifies his opinion in my book. Because it doesn't feel like there was enough effort to understand the context of those situations. So instead of, I'm trying to think of the right verbiage here, I'm just going to disregard it. I'm just going to disregard it and call it uninformed. And you know what? It is difficult to have some of that. It is difficult to be a national analyst. But you should always strive to at least have that context. And he obviously didn't, based on how he presented himself. So that's frustrating. William makes a good point. Let the media not talk about us all year like they didn't talk about the Wolves all year and another deep run. Hey, if only that were the case, the Vikings are going to be on standalone games 7 times this year. Maybe an 8th if they get one more primetime game added. So I don't think the Vikings are going to get that lucky.
Technically 8 right now with the 3rd preseason game. It's the standalone NFL Network game.
Oh, I'm not counting the preseason game on CBS because nobody of consequence is going to play.
Right.
Maybe you get to see Cam Ward, maybe, but probably not. We've had enough negativity talk. Let's talk about some of the positives with JJ McCarthy. Let's talk about the positives. But before I do that, Dave, did you have anything to add before we kind of move on? Because I went on one of my nice little rambles to having that conversation about McCarthy.
I disagree with you, but that's fine.
What do you disagree about?
There's evidence. You say there's no evidence because he has not played a regular season game yet. And I agree. He has not played a regular season game. But there is evidence. Besides, if you want to take his college career and before that, his high school career, there is what happens at practice. Practices mean something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the reporters are to be believed, and it came from multiple reporters, his footwork is good. He's left off just where he was last year, if not a little bit better. So the footwork is basically fixed. And you know when he could get on his feet, he was working the footwork angle as well as the mental side all season last year. We hear what comes out of camp. We see the highlights. Now, they're highlights. We don't see the lowlights other than him hitting, what's his face, the QB2 in the head today with a football. But we'd hear things. It's not like Kellen Mond when, no, I don't need to start him. I'll watch him in practice. From Mike Zimmer. We're not hearing stuff like that. We're hearing he's got the system down. He's making things right. Yes, there's a few times when we think he doesn't have something, and boom, he's got it. And then there's other times when we figured he got it and he's got to learn. But that's why this is the teaching period of the offseason. So I think there's enough evidence just with him last offseason and preseason and this offseason to say he isn't going to be terrible. He's not going to be Christian Ponder at all. I think he's going to be better. Now, will he have bumps? Yes. Sam Darnold had bumps last year. And where was Sam Darnold at this point last year? He seemed to be lost learning this stuff. It took him a few weeks into the season to actually have it click in. Where was Kirk Cousins when he was learning this? It took him almost a year to where he got to very comfortable with this offense. I think JJ is picking it up faster than those guys because he has basically a clean slate to start off with. He does not have that previous NFL offenses or previous NFL experience to cause bad habits or to make poor decisions from. I think this is going to be a better. Now, it's his first year starting. There's going to be bumps. I don't doubt that. But I don't think it's going to be as bad as you portrayed the low end of this at all. So, but we'll find out. The script has yet to be written.
So, oddly enough, I actually think you and I are on the same page. I think the way we're discerning some of this is semantics. You are taking the evidence that we get from practice that it's immediately going to translate into games. I am taking it as I'm not saying anything until I actually see him in games because I want to see that tangible work bear fruit on the field. So I actually think we're relatively in lockstep in that sense. But I think the way we're going about it in our heads, as far as you're seeing evidence, I'm seeing hope. I'm seeing belief that this is probably going to translate, but until it does, I can't. The way my mind is seeing it is I can't say that it's going to. So I actually think we're on relatively the same field here.
So it's a bandwagon type deal. You got to see him win first before you hop on the bandwagon.
I want to see the process take place in live games first before I really say, okay, I know this is going to be the guy. Because I don't want to, like, for lack of a better term, Thor
didn't count.
No, I think it does count, but it's also not NFL football at its highest level like he's going to play all year. Like, I don't want to, like, and I respect Thor, but Thor has gone so far over to JJ McCarthy's going to be this, that, and the other thing. And if he ends up being right, good on him. I'm not comfortable doing that. I was comfortable coming close with like Drake May because I had a much more of a belief in what May is as a quarterback. But I want to see the stuff that we have already seen on the practice field translate to that field before I feel really confident. And does that make me, I guess, for lack of a better term, a little bit of a coward? Well, maybe it does, but
I'm not saying
so
you're a
much.
coward. You're not a coward
I'm
by
not.
going this
Well,
direction.
hold on. I know you're not calling me a coward. I'm using that verbiage myself. It's more, I've seen enough to where we can project somebody to be good and they aren't, to where I just have trepidation in saying that he's going to be really, really good. Because I believe he can be really, really good, but it's not a guarantee he gets there.
So what's the
And
difference
that's why
between him and Drake May?
I just think Drake May was a significantly better prospect. From an arm talent standpoint, I thought he had a better arm. I thought he had a better deep ball. I thought he was more accurate. I thought he was better creating within the pocket. I just thought he was a better player.
Yeah, but
And that's not saying
in the
McCarthy was
translation
bad.
of that to being a pro quarterback, he hadn't played a game in the NFL until last season.
No. He hadn't.
And his record was pretty pathetic, but that's not because of him.
That team was in an abysmal state last year for many reasons. But I saw a lot of the processes that I believe would translate. They started to translate almost immediately. And if there was one guy I wanted to hitch my wagon to as a quarterback, I was very open. I wanted it to be Drake May. But I felt like in the moment I was a little cold in the McCarthy pick just because I'm like, well, I like him, but do I love him? Oh, I'll be honest, I didn't love him. I don't love him now, but I really like him, and I think he's got a really good projection. Calling me coward. Oh, no, I am not Colin Coward. Colin Coward is brilliant at making money, and he's brilliant at playing both sides of the fence. I just try to give you my honest opinion.
Yeah, but you can believe there's fans that feel the same way about J.J. McCarthy or more, i.e. Thor Nystrom, than your quarterback, Drake May.
No,
that's
it's
and
a completely fair and valid opinion.
And we know KOC like Drake May because they reportedly attempted to trade up for him.
Yeah. No, it's a completely fair and valid opinion to have that belief on McCarthy. I'm just saying I'm not completely comfortable going all in. I'm 100% comfortable going all in on the potential, and you want to give him that chance to be that guy. But like, if it were one of those things where you have to sign this guy to a mega deal, I'm not doing it at this moment. I think that's probably,
you wait till he gets in year 4.
Well, you legally can sign him, but I'm talking about conceptually, where I want to see the proof of concept. I want to see, we believe in this guy. We believe he can do X, Y, and Z. I just want to see it. I don't need to see it for like 3-4 games. Like once we see him for like a couple games and really see him take to another level, then I'm going to feel a lot more comfortable. But okay, we really do have our guy. I think we do, but I still don't have like both feet in, but I think we should kind of stop talking about the maybes. Let's talk about like, what does it look like if he just is really good? Because I do think, as you mentioned, Dave, there's a lot of stuff we can glean from practice and some of the footwork stuff. And I do think one of the things that I will pour a little cold water on is like when the beat says that, oh, he looks this, and this, they're only seeing one practice. And then now they got to see a second one today. Mandatory minicamp, I think we're going to get a better sense because I believe it's all 3 days of availability. Then with training camp, you're going to see him be able to stack multiple days in a row. So how consistent is some of that footwork? I don't think we have enough of an answer yet, but I will say that if they're noticing, hey, the footwork looks pretty crisp. It looks like he didn't miss any time. That's a really good starting point. And if the footwork is that crisp, then that's a great thing because there was a lot that they wanted to change, and they did a lot of stuff to really maneuver with that. And one of the things I had issues with coming out was I thought JJ McCarthy's deep ball struggled. It lost juice, which is really weird because in that intermediate range, and there's the combine test where he threw the ball at 61 miles an hour and only Joe Milton threw it faster at 62. So he's got a hose. He can whip it. But whipping it and throwing it deep successfully are different things. So, yes, and I think Skywalking McCarthy makes a good point. If he's just really good but not great, statistically, it'll look a lot like Kirk Cousins. But will it feel like Kirk Cousins? I think those can be two different things. That's going to be one to watch. Stats will only tell you part of the story. So, let's talk more about McCarthy's deep ball. It just seemed to lose something anytime he had to throw it more than 30 yards, where it would almost like die on him at the end. And I think some of that can be fixed with mechanics. I'm not a quarterback expert, and I'm going to try to talk to people about some of that deep ball stuff because I think he doesn't quite have his arm and hips completely synced well enough to be able to consistently hit that very deep ball, because throwing a deep ball is so much different than throwing a hard ball in that intermediate range. Whipping it is different than throwing it deep. So you're asking your body to do some different things there. You're using arc, whereas like Brett Favre can throw a ball like 20 yards and he can throw it, feels like a million miles an hour and break down driver's finger every 6 weeks. But that deep ball, it's a different kind of arm strength. And he has the arm strength, but there's something missing with it. And that's going to be something that if he has fixed with some of that footwork and some of the mechanical stuff, I think McCarthy can really take that step forward, because that deep ball is not one that O'Connell likes to use a ton, but he does like to use it. And if you can prevent that deep ball from dying, that's going to be one of the first things I look at. Okay, those first few deep balls, what do they look like? How mechanically are his hips, feet, shoulder aligned to where he can make those throws? I think having that part of his game will help elevate the offense a lot. But in reality, the deep balls are great. And you need to be able to at least threaten that level of the field, which I think McCarthy is plenty capable of doing. At what kind of level? Well, let's put it this way. Sam Darnold was the best deep ball thrower in the NFL last year, and it wasn't close. On throws over 20 yards, he was number one in attempts, number one in completions, number one in completion percentage, number one in yards, and tied for first in touchdowns. There was nobody better in the NFL throwing deep last year than Sam Darnold. So we will have to temper some of those expectations because he was so good last year at doing those things. But where Kevin O'Connell likes to live is that 10 to 20 yard window where he can run a 7-step drop, play action, and hit a dig route at 18 yards. And he wants
on
to
any
pepper
side
those
of the field, left or right.
Yeah. He wants to pepper that stuff in. And that was frustrating at times last year because the offensive line sometimes struggled to be able to pick up some of those defenders, pick up some of those rushers. But I think it's also important to know that some of it you can maneuver because, hey, edge rusher gets pressure. Guess what? Step up in the pocket. Step up and just get yourself in a comfortable position to be able to whip it down the field. And I think McCarthy has shown plenty should be really excited about that because the limited opportunities. And this is one of the reasons why I wasn't super high on him is the small sample size is a little bit of a concern because at Michigan, he didn't get a lot of the opportunities to do as much as you really wanted him to. You wanted him to have more opportunities on third down. You wanted him to just have more opportunities to throw in general. You wanted him to have more situations where he had to take the team and really put them on his back. The couple he did a really good job. Michigan, Alabama in the college football playoff. He was a big part of the reason why they got down 21-0 against TCU. But he was also a huge part of the reason why they only lost by 3 and they ended up taking the lead at one point in that football game. So there is some things to say where he'll be able to handle that stuff. But being able to do it at the NFL level and being able to dominate that middle of the field and step up in the pocket and feel the pressure, I think that stuff will translate for him. Will it translate immediately? I don't know. But I think when you look at his path to success, it's going to be dominating the middle of the field. It's going to be handling play action. It's going to be stepping up in the pocket. It's going to be making plays with his legs, not necessarily running. Like Fran Tarkenton led the National Football League in rushing yards for a quarterback for what? 25 years until Steve Young broke it. But Fran was never the type of guy to run because he wanted to. He ran because he had to. That's one of the reasons why in an interview I saw with him, he kind of compared himself to Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes doesn't want to run. He wants to throw. And I think that's kind of who McCarthy is too. He wants to throw the ball, but he is more than capable of being able to eat up chunks of yards. So his most likely path to success is going to be hitting those play action dig routes, hitting guys in stride in the intermediate levels of the field, being able to read defenses consistently, which he did show growth. And that's one of the things where that preseason game, I ended up being really impressed because he threw that interception. And then you saw just within the course of that game, he improved drastically from play 1 to play, 30 when he ended up leaving the game. You saw growth within that series, the willingness and ability to take coaching. That kind of stuff is really important too. And I think that will continue to pave the way to him potentially being really successful early on, and both short and long term. I think McCarthy is
about needing a menu. We go from JJ being possibly bad to JJ being good, and in the show, and it's the basis of this show, Biggs. It's to talk about the range of possibilities from a schlub that needs to be cut to a gold jacket, basically.
Yeah, it's just to lay out the different possibilities and why they may come to fruition. It's not necessarily me saying this is what's going to happen or that's what's going to happen, but understanding if McCarthy were to struggle or potentially be bad next year, what does that look like and how do we get out of it? And I thought we did a good job of kind of identifying the little things that could go wrong and why a lot of it's mainly fixable. And then talking about a lot of the things where things could go really right. It's one of the reasons why I was concerned is because so much of what he looked really good at was just a small sample size. And when you have a smaller sample size, it is harder to be confident in that projection than it is if you would have had 1,200 attempts in college versus just over 600 he had. If he had more opportunities on third down, more close games where he had to really step up and be the guy. He's got the ability to do all of those things, but they just weren't at a high quantity level, which is where there's a little bit of extra trepidation because you see quantity more with other quarterbacks where you understand you have more information. More information is good. You want more information, but sometimes you have to take the leap of faith with less. And the Vikings took a very calculated leap of faith by prioritizing JJ McCarthy because they believe that even though the sample sizes are small, they believe he's going to be able to translate and he's going to be able to do all of those things. But by having the conversation of, well, what does it look like if he's good or what does it look like if he's bad next year? I think it just helps lay a foundation of understanding to what JJ McCarthy is going to be short and long term. He could be really good. He could be okay. He could be really bad. I think the more likely scenario is what I can't remember who put it in the chat. Might have been Skywalking McCarthy. The numbers look a lot like Kirk Cousins. I think that's a realistic outcome, but I feel like fans are going to feel a lot more comfortable with how McCarthy plays the game versus how Cousins played the game. And that vibe is much more important than just the raw numbers, because it's going to be more about the situational football, more about third downs, which he was really good at in college. It's going to be more about sack avoidance, which he was really good at in college, more about handling pressure, which he was really good at in college. But as we talked about with like the Lewis Cine example, and I use that because it does help identify what makes the NFL draft so incredibly hard. Just because you're good at it in college doesn't mean you'll be good at it in the NFL.
Or
And
vice
that's
versa.
where-
Take Josh Allen. We talked about him at the beginning.
Mhm.
And Phillips talked about being there when he came in. When Josh Allen was being drafted, we talked about him and that he could not hit the broadside of a barn. He could fire it over the edge of the stadium, no problem. But he wasn't accurate. And it took development to make him such and turn him into the stud quarterback he actually is. And we believe our KOC can do the same thing with JJ McCarthy. Now, it's not that JJ, has the absolute howitzer of an arm that Josh Allen does. And I'd be curious to see them in a throw-off, but I think there's a few different things to fix, whether it's the fading on a deep ball or whatever. But I think that's mechanical, and it can be fixed.
Mm-hmm. And I think the Josh Allen comparison is a really interesting one, because Allen was like, his big thing was just inconsistencies. You saw flashes where it's just like, whoa. There was a play at Wyoming where he's rolling out to his right and he just throws an absolute whip 50 yards down the field, perfect placement. It's like, how did he do that? And it's just incredible, but it's being able to harness that and be able to get that with any form of consistency. And I do think if anybody can get consistency out of a player, it's Kevin O'Connell. And I do think Harrison Phillips, having the knowledge of seeing it happen in real time with Josh Allen, he can be able to provide some insight to where McCarthy can potentially learn from something that Harrison Phillips saw with Josh Allen, because they practice against each other every day. So what does that end up looking like? And I'm really, really fascinated to kind of see how he grows over the course of this year, because I think McCarthy will be a good football player. I think it will be a good quarterback. Will he end up being a great one? I genuinely don't know. But you know what? We don't know a lot of things, and we're going to find out, and it's going to happen in front of us in real time. And for that, I'm excited. I'm excited for all of that. And the Minnesota Vikings potentially have a really, really good quarterback in their hands. Things are trending upward. The vibes are great, as Dave talked about with how the beat is talking about him. Because, look, I have a lot of respect for like Kevin Seifert, but Seifert has no problem telling you if something is bad. And you like guys like that on the beat, because when they see something, they're unafraid to just say it. And is a little doomer sometimes, sure, but I try to be overwhelmingly positive as a whole. Like, that's just kind of what my personality is. But you want to be able to at least acknowledge some of that stuff. And I think Seifert, if he sees something bad, he'll just straight up tell you. He's only had good things to say about McCarthy. And I think that speaks a lot more volumes. But you can't know for sure until you see it on the field. Even sure things go wrong. So I'm intrigued to see what happens. I think we did a lot to kind of lay out the foundation of what the wide range of outcomes is going to be for McCarthy. But I think the one thing that we haven't talked about yet that's going to matter most is the run game. The run game is going to be the biggest factor in helping out JJ McCarthy. The addition of Jordan Phillips, Aaron Jones coming back, the improved offensive line, that's going to be huge. And I look forward to kind of looking at everything, continuing to talk about this over the course of the offseason. And hey, we're going to have a good time, Dave. It's fun to have a quarterback that's not Kirk Cousins on the team. And remember last year, we talked about like the path to Sam Darnold being really, really good. And we ended up being like, that show ended up being pretty spot on to what actually ended up happening. So
surprisingly, yes. Biggs has
we're going to be right about something. Okay, go ahead.
He's celebrating 8 months as a member, and we appreciate that, Biggs, very much. And he wants to know, will Harbaugh have the advantage over JJ in the San Diego versus Minnesota game? I think that's a good test.
Yeah. Here's the one interesting thing. Harbaugh isn't just a great coach, and he's been great everywhere he's been. He was also a good NFL quarterback for a long time. I mean, he wasn't great, but he was like, what would be a good comparison in today's NFL? He would be like the 26th best starter in the league, but he had like a couple years, like the 1 year where the Colts almost made the Super Bowl in 94, where, damn, he was like a top quarterback in the league for that year. So I do think Harbaugh's going to have the advantage.
Yes, Los Angeles.
I do think Harbaugh's going to have the advantage because he's got a lot more experience playing and coaching. But that doesn't mean, like, that's the thing. McCarthy can be coached up to attack a lot of the things that they know Harbaugh will attack. So it's going to be a fascinating matchup. Who gets the better end? I don't know. But Harbaugh for sure has the advantage because he just has a resume. He does. And eventually McCarthy, I think, will be able to get an advantage because he'll have enough time in the league. He'll have enough experience. But for now, yeah, it's Harbaugh. And that's not a big deal.
It's going to be a rough week because the Vikings will have just played the Eagles. And then they come in on Thursday night to play the Chargers.
I'm going to be honest. I actually think that could play in the Vikings' favor.
Okay.
To where, like, Harbaugh won't have a ton of time to be able to really dive into the film and get those idiosyncrasies. That could be in the Vikings' favor. So.
Can't wait to watch. Can't wait for that chapter to be written.
We're going to have a lot more about McCarthy throughout the course of the offseason. Training camp is going to be a lot of fun to kind of parse through, to kind of watch in real time. And I look forward to it. I look forward to all of it. And that's going to be the show tonight. I need to go make dinner. I know Dave's probably got dinner waiting on him as well. Thank you guys so much for joining. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell for those notifications. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. And remember, when it comes to JJ McCarthy, we don't know yet. Enjoy the ride. SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching the Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!